Taxis, the only thing more frequently seen on the streets of New York than those rappers handing out their fire mixtapes. Like G Money here. I listen to it, man. Don't quit your day job. Since its establishment in the early 1900s, taxis have become a popular mode of transportation in big cities. The booming population in these large cities has made owning a personal vehicle a hassle and has left people to rely on taxis. However, in the past few years, taxis have been threatened by the rising popularity of ride-sharing services such as Uber or Lyft. And for those of you who are unaware of what a ride-sharing service is, let me explain. After you download the app on your smartphone, you simply enter in your current location and destination and look for the drivers in your area. You can view the driver's profile and see their ratings. After choosing a driver, you simply click and the driver comes to pick you up. It's like Tinder, but the sex is optional. People take taxis not because they want to, but because they have no alternatives. It's like when all the bathroom stalls are filled, so you have to take a shit in the sink. I mean, honestly, who doesn't love being in a car that may or may not have bacteria, fungus, swine flu, bird flu, West Nile virus, black plague, affluenza, influenza, AIDS, STDs, R2D2s? But beyond the endless shit show that is the taxi industry, these ride-sharing services have provided massive benefits to the public. Aside from convenience, it provides a system of accountability for both the driver and the rider. Both the driver and the rider can rate each other, making it visible to others. And if your driver is rude or unsafe, you can leave rating and feedback accordingly. And on occasion, some drivers will go above and beyond to get a good rating, such as providing phone charging stations and snacks, which is the only time it's okay to take candy from strangers. And if you're a driver and the person you drove made a mess in your car or is disrespectful, you can leave feedback as well. Like in this video where the guy beats up his Uber driver.
With a dash cam video rolling, this Uber driver takes a violent backseat pummeling.
Grabbed my head, he was trying to smash it against the window. You know, I decided enough was enough.
But here is what happened when Caban tried to tell his passenger that the ride was over.
Get out of my car or I will call the police.
Let me tell you something, you all.
Suddenly, he was getting punched from behind again and again. You can see the passenger trying to slam his head into the glass. Finally, Caban is able to click off the safety of his mace.
Yeah! Turned around and I emptied as much of that spray as I could into his face until he got out of the car.
Within minutes, police are there, arresting the rider, identified as Benjamin Golden, who was vomiting from the pepper spray. Uber says they have banned the rider from ever using their service again.
Wow. If this happened to a taxi driver, there wouldn't be much the company can do since there's little to no regulation. But thanks to its rating system, Uber can ban this rider and other drivers who know not to pick them up. However, the benefits of ride-sharing services do not end at its functionality. Uber has created numerous jobs for people around the world. In 2015, Uber created 8,000 jobs in Toronto, 15,000 jobs in Australia, and 50,000 jobs in Europe. The average earning of an Uber driver is $19 an hour, and while this varies city by city and the times which it takes to drive, making $19 an hour isn't bad for a job that only requires you to drive. If you're over the age of 21, have had your license for at least 3 years, and a car from 2000 or later, and you pass the driving test and criminal background check, you can be an Uber driver. Think of being an Uber driver like being a stripper. Like a stripper, drivers are independent contractors, have minimal requirements, and charge around $25 for a lap dance. Beyond the convenience Uber provides, the company has found a way to give back to the community through their service, even helping people who are homeless.
Now we turn to the home front. Veterans returning from the front lines are facing a sad and stunning statistic. By one estimate, nearly 50,000 veterans will experience homelessness each year.
50,000 veterans. That's 50,000 people who served our country and are now on the streets. However, Uber has provided a new opportunity for these people.
Uber is looking to hire more veterans, and it's offering new incentives to get them on its driving force. The rideshare company wants to hire 50,000 more veterans and is teaming up with Hiring Our Heroes to get it done. Uber says it will take less commission from veterans and help them buy cars at a better interest rate. Veteran drivers already working for Uber say it's a great option for work.
I think veterans are well suited for this type of work because we're service-based anyways too, and we're offering a service to someone. We're helping them get from point A to point B, so it's kind of mission-oriented.
Uber says by hiring veterans, it's hiring more quality drivers who have a better work ethic and do more trips than the average driver.
Not only are they providing 50,000 jobs, they're providing 50,000 jobs to veterans. But even when they're not actively trying to give back to the community, they benefit the public just by being there. It's a generally shared opinion that drunk driving is a terrible practice that almost always ends tragically, claiming thousands of lives each year. And the worst part about this whole thing is how easily it could be prevented. When you live in a city with easy access to public transportation services, driving drunk is not usually a problem given the various ways an intoxicated person could go home. But take a smaller city like Sedona, Arizona, for example, a city that has a population of 10,000 where they don't have subways or taxis. The city's population is so small that the things they do for fun include going on a hike or drinking because of how little there is to do. Yo, man, there's like, Grand Canyon's right by here. It's like 5-6 miles. It'll take us like 30 minutes if we're running. And I know what you're thinking. What are you gonna do with the heels? Here's my solution. Put them on your hands, and you can rock climb like this. After a heavy night of drinking without a sober driver to take them home, they often end up driving themselves. Not only do they become a risk to themselves, they run the risk of they risk the lives of every other innocent person on the road. However, thanks to the convenience of ride-sharing services which operate in cities around the world, even those without taxis, many crashes are being prevented. In fact, studies show that in cities in California where the services operate have been lowered by half each month, from 60 to 30. Since 2012, that's approximately 2,000 car crashes prevented. Providing alternatives to drunk driving has prevented many deaths and injuries. Living in places like Sedona without a car is like living without legs. Even in bigger cities such as San Diego without a major bus or taxi system, you have to own a car to get around. Ride-sharing services provide the perfect alternative. Thanks to the accessibility of these ride services, you could get a car to your house within 5 minutes, whereas calling a taxi could take anywhere from 10 to 20. At least in big cities, you're usually in walking distance of a grocery store and a few decent places to eat. Even in places like New York, public transportation can be a hassle. When you want to hail a taxi, you're suddenly invisible to any passing taxis, and you end up looking like an idiot on the sidewalk. It's kind of like when you think someone's waving to you, so you wave back, but they're actually waving to the person behind you.
Oh, you weren't waving to me, right, got it.
Oh, hey, man. Right, all right, cool, that's fine. Think about the small cities and towns where taxis are practically non-existent and not viewed as a viable form of transportation. Think about just trying to go to the airport. You could call a friend to take you, but let's be honest, you have no friends. So what are your choices? You can call a taxi cab service to take you, but it'll cost you $2.80 just to get in and $3 per mile. Or you could take the cheaper and more convenient alternative of a ride-sharing service, which would cost only $2.20 in addition to 26 cents per minute and $1.30 per mile. Not only do you have to pay less, you can find the Uber or Lyft that's closest to your destination so you could save time. It's not surprising that ride-sharing services have gained a significant loyal customer base and support from the public as a result of its contributions to the community. But of course, since these ride-sharing services provide an alternative to taxis, it has inevitably led to a loss of customers for the industry. However, the loss for the taxi industry is not unexpected. We found a forum for taxi drivers called Taxis for Your Own Safety Don't Pick Up Black Males. Sadly, this very real forum included comments such as, "Cab drivers should not pick up anyone wearing a hooded sweatshirt in the wee hours of the morning, just saying. And if I was a cab driver and saw a black male waving his hand to stop my cab, I would speed away in a heartbeat." I mean, we understand staying safe as much as the next person, but really? Not picking up a black male because he's wearing a hoodie at night? You realize that at night it can get near or under 30 degrees. What would you prefer, to pick up a naked man at 11 p.m. at night? I mean, it's 2016. You know Black Lives Matter now, right? If you still have a fear of black people who wear hoodies, then you should probably go back to the early 1900s when black people still sat at the back of the bus. But instead of trying to compete with these services, which would be the reasonable thing to do, they've turned to unreasonable methods to voice their concern.
Hey, John Oliver! I am not a slave!
Emotions ran high in downtown Toronto today as hundreds of taxis congregated at City Hall for a protest against UberX. Several streets were clogged as convoys of cabs came into the city center and drivers refused to take any fares. The taxi drivers want the city to seek an injunction to shut down the popular ride-sharing service. They say UberX is cutting into their business and creating an unfair market. But their protest left many pedestrians, cyclists, and especially other drivers frustrated. Several taxi drivers were fined for driving too slowly during the protest. Traffic was backed up on the Gardner Expressway, Highway 427, the Don Valley Parkway, and Queens Park Crescent at different times throughout the day.
The fact that these taxis have turned to creating public disturbance is like if Vons lined up all of their produce outside the entrance to Ralph's because Ralph's prices were lower and more appealing. Vons doesn't do that because they're not idiots. They do the reasonable thing and lower their prices. Instead of trying to compete with the ride-sharing services prices, taxi drivers act childish, blocking traffic during rush hour, which as a result has led to ambulances being prevented from getting into the hospital. Oh, what's that, Johnny? You're dying due to blood loss and you need to get to the hospital right away, Johnny? I'm sorry, Johnny. You're going to have to wait because they're trying to fucking prove a point, Johnny. Dude, you dying in an ambulance is not the priority here, Johnny. But really, this isn't the first and probably isn't the last time taxis have pulled this stunt. Not only is it ridiculously childish, it's disturbing the flow of traffic. And if you've ever driven in a big city like New York or LA, you know it's already terrible enough as it is. In Paris, taxi drivers have tried to protest by throwing rocks at what they assumed to be Uber cars. So not only are they attempting to throw rocks at Uber cars, but now they're just throwing them at pretty much any car that passes by. And we're not talking about little pebbles here, we're talking Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson-sized stones here. Taxi drivers have been caught on film throwing cinder blocks that break through people's windows. Damn. Hold it up. Can you imagine the genius behind that idea? Oh yeah, let's throw cinder blocks onto what we think are Uber cars so people want to use our taxis more. Isn't it a little ironic when taxis protest Uber for its illegal and unfair practices by illegally protesting? And with further stupidity, last year, cab drivers across Europe protested Uber by going on strike. And of course, that led to an 850% increase in signups for Uber. Yeah, let's go on strike to give Uber all of our customers since they're taking some of our customers. I'll admit, taxis do have reasonable grievances with ride-sharing services. In order to be a taxi driver, they're required to have a medallion which allows them to legally pick up people flagging them down. However, a single medallion costs anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million, so it's a considerable investment for a taxi driver. And now these app-based car services have decreased the value of these medallions since Uber and Lyft are not required to have them. But it's incredibly difficult to take their grievances into account when they create public disturbances that make everyone wary of the taxi industry altogether. So look here, taxi drivers. Instead of whining like a giant baby and doing things counterintuitive to the change you're trying to make, maybe, just maybe, make your voices heard in a way that doesn't make everyone hate you and try to compete with them. This has got to change. Trying to get a ban on ride-sharing services that have gathered massive public support will only create further backlash on the taxi industry, and it makes it incredibly difficult to side with taxis in this battle. And by no means are ride-sharing services perfect, and for an industry that provides services to such a wide variety of people and places, it's nearly impossible to be so. However, companies like Uber and Lyft have created an industry that supports a system of accessibility and accountability for both the drivers and the public who rely on them, which is such a drastic difference between these and taxis. So next time you need to get somewhere, take an Uber for Johnny.